The gunshot that killed Sarah Hartley's dreams of a normal life happened on a Tuesday, but it wasn't aimed at her. It was aimed at the man who had tried to tell her she couldn't run her father's ranch alone, and she had fired the warning shot clean through his hat while he sat on his horse at her property line. Word spread through Columbus, New Mexico faster than wildfire in August of 1882. By Wednesday morning, every woman in town crossed the street when they saw her coming. By Thursday, the minister had mentioned the dangers of unwomanly behavior in his sermon, though he never spoke her name. By Friday, Sarah found herself standing in the general store while 3 women she had known since childhood whispered loud enough for her to hear about how tragic it was that poor Samuel Hartley had raised such a wild, uncontrollable daughter. And wasn't it shameful that she refused every decent marriage proposal that came her way? Sarah bought her supplies with her head held high, paid in cash she had earned herself from selling horses, and walked out into the dusty street with her parcels. She was 22 years old, owned 300 acres of good grazing land, and had more horse sense than most men in the territory. None of that seemed to matter to the good people of Columbus. The ranch house felt emptier than usual that evening. Her father had been dead for 8 months now, taken by pneumonia during a cold snap the previous winter. He had taught her everything about raising horses, about reading the land, about running a ranch that could sustain itself through drought and plenty. He had never once told her she needed a husband to do any of it. He had told her she needed skill, determination, and a good eye for horseflesh. Sarah sat on the porch as the sun painted the desert hills gold and crimson. The Mexican border was less than 3 miles south, and the evening breeze carried the scent of sage and creosote. Her mare, a dappled gray named Juniper, nickered from the corral. 5 other horses moved lazily in the bigger pasture beyond, and in the far field she could see the silhouettes of the mustangs she was currently gentling for sale. She heard the rider before she saw him, the steady rhythm of hoofbeats on hard, packed earth. Sarah's hand moved instinctively to the rifle she kept by the door, but she didn't pick it up. Not yet. She watched as a tall figure on a buckskin gelding emerged from the twilight, moving at an easy pace that suggested he wasn't looking for trouble. The man reined in about 20 feet from her porch, respecting the boundary of her immediate space. He was lean and weathered, probably in his mid-20s, with dark hair that curled slightly beneath his hat. Even in the fading light, she could see his eyes were a startling shade of blue-green. "Evening, madam," he said, his voice carrying a slight drawl that spoke of Texas or maybe Oklahoma. "Name's Owen Xander. I'm looking for work, and I heard in town that Samuel Hartley's daughter might be hiring." Sarah studied him carefully. His clothes were worn but clean, his saddle was good quality but showed years of use, and his horse was well cared for. More importantly, his hands were positioned clearly on his saddle horn, nowhere near the gun at his hip. "You heard wrong," Sarah said flatly. "I'm not hiring." Owen nodded slowly, but he didn't turn his horse. "Funny thing is, I heard you had about 30 head of horses that need training, and I also heard you've been doing it all yourself since your father passed. That's a lot of work for one person. I manage just fine. I don't doubt it." He shifted in his saddle, and she could see the weariness in the set of his shoulders. "I also heard that you fired a warning shot at Jacob Morrison's head when he tried to pressure you into selling your land to him." Sarah's jaw tightened. "He had no right to come onto my property making demands." "No, madam, he surely didn't." Owen's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I also heard that every decent family in Columbus thinks you're too independent, too wild, and too stubborn for your own good. If you came here to lecture me, you can turn that horse around right now." "No lecture." Owen met her eyes directly. I came to say that being independent, wild, and stubborn sounds like exactly the kind of person who can make it out here, the kind of person I'd want to work for. Something in Sarah's chest loosened slightly, though she kept her expression neutral. What makes you think you can train horses? My father ran a ranch in Texas until Comanche raiders burned it down when I was 15. I've been working horses ever since. I can show you my skills if you give me a chance. Sarah considered this. She did need help, that was true enough. The work was overwhelming, and she had 3 buyers coming in the next month expecting well-trained mounts. But taking on a hired hand meant trusting someone, letting someone into her space, and she had learned that most men expected more authority than they had earned. I pay fair wages, but I make all the decisions about the horses and the ranch, she said carefully. I don't need advice about how to run my property, and I don't need someone telling me what a woman should or shouldn't do. Owen nodded. Understood. I'm looking for honest work and a place to lay my head. I follow the boss's orders, whoever that boss might be. There's a bunkhouse out back. It's not fancy, but it's weatherproof. Wages are $30 a month plus meals. You eat breakfast at sunrise and we work until the work is done. Fair enough. Owen touched the brim of his hat. I'm grateful for the opportunity, Miss Hartley. Don't make me regret it, Mr. Xander. She watched as he rode around toward the bunkhouse, then stood and went inside to figure out how much food she would need to buy in town. Having another person around would change things, and she wasn't entirely sure how she felt about that. But the horses needed training, and pride wouldn't pay the bills or fill the contracts. The next morning arrived cool and clear, the way November mornings did in southern New Mexico. Sarah was already in the corral with a young bay stallion when Owen emerged from the bunkhouse. She had been working with the horse for 20 minutes, getting him accustomed to the saddle blanket, speaking to him in low, soothing tones. Owen leaned against the fence, watching without comment. Sarah appreciated that he didn't immediately offer suggestions or try to take over. After another 10 minutes, she draped the blanket across the stallion's back, let him feel the weight of it, then removed it and rewarded him with patience and calm energy. You gentle them all the way down? Owen asked when she finally led the stallion back to the pasture. All the way. I don't break horses. I train them to trust. Sarah latched the gate securely. My father taught me that a horse trained with patience will work harder and longer than one broken with force. Smart man. Owen pushed off from the fence. What do you want me to work on today? They fell into a routine over the following weeks that surprised Sarah with its ease. Owen was as good as his word, skilled with horses and willing to take direction. He never questioned her decisions, never suggested she was doing something wrong because she was a woman. He simply worked, steady and reliable, and the horses responded to him with the same trust they gave her. But the town's opinion of Sarah only worsened. Now she wasn't just the wild Hartley girl who refused to marry. She was the shameless woman living alone on a ranch with a hired man who wasn't family. Never mind that Owen slept in the bunkhouse 100 yards from the main house. Never mind that their relationship was purely professional. The whispers grew louder, more vicious. Sarah first noticed Owen's anger about it 3 weeks after he had started working for her. They had ridden into Columbus together to pick up supplies and check on a saddle Sarah had ordered. At the saddlery, the owner, Mr. Peterson, had refused to look at Sarah directly, addressing all his comments to Owen as if he were the ranch owner. The saddle's ready for your boss, Peterson had said, nodding at Owen. Miss Hartley is my boss, Owen had replied evenly. Peterson's expression had soured. That's not a natural situation. Woman running a ranch alone, living with a man not her husband. There's a word for that kind of arrangement. Sarah had felt the old familiar anger rise, but before she could speak, Owen had stepped forward. The word is employment, Owen had said, his voice low and dangerous. Miss Hartley hired me to train horses. That's all. And if you've got something to say about her character, you're going to say it to me as well, because insulting her means insulting me. The confrontation had ended with Sarah paying for her saddle and leaving, but Owen had been tense all the way back to the ranch. That evening, as they worked together feeding the horses, he finally spoke what was on his mind. "Doesn't it make you angry?" he asked. "The way they treat you." Sarah measured out grain with steady hands, every single day, but being angry doesn't change anything. I just have to keep proving them wrong. You shouldn't have to prove anything. Owen's voice was tight with frustration. You own your land. You run your ranch better than most men in this territory. You pay your bills on time and deliver quality horses. What more do they want? They want me to be small and quiet and dependent, Sarah said. She looked at him directly. They want me to need saving. They want me to admit that I can't do this alone and marry someone who will take over everything my father built. Owen was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "For what it's worth, I think the fact that you're independent and capable is exactly what makes you perfect for this life. The territory doesn't need more helpless people. It needs more people like you." Something shifted between them in that moment, something Sarah felt in her chest like the first warm day of spring after a long winter. She had been so focused on protecting her independence, on proving she didn't need anyone, that she hadn't stopped to consider the difference between needing someone and choosing to want them in her life. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That means more than you know." The weeks turned colder as December approached. They worked side by side every day, and Sarah found herself noticing things about Owen she hadn't let herself see before. The way he sang softly to the horses when he groomed them. The way he always made sure she ate enough at meals, quietly serving her larger portions when he thought she had been working too hard. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, with something warm and wondering in his eyes. One evening, a windstorm blew in from the west, carrying stinging sand and tumbleweeds. They worked together to get all the horses secured in the barn and shelter, moving in tandem like they had been partners for years instead of months. When the last horse was safe, they stood in the barn doorway watching the storm rage across the desert. "My mother used to love storms like this," Owen said suddenly. "She said they reminded her that nature was bigger than all our small human troubles." "Is she still in Texas?" Sarah asked. "No. She died when the Comanche came. My father, too." Owen's voice was matter-of-fact, but Sarah could hear the old pain beneath it. "I got away because I was out checking fence line. By the time I got back, everything was burning." Sarah's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. "I'm sorry. It was 10 years ago, but I still think about them every day." He turned to look at her. "My mother was a lot like you, actually. Stubborn, independent, capable. My father used to say she could do anything she set her mind to, and he was right. She helped build that ranch from nothing." "She sounds like she was remarkable." "She was." Owen squeezed her hand gently. "She would have liked you." They stood there as the storm howled outside, hands linked, neither of them pulling away. When the wind finally began to die down, Owen turned to face her fully. "Sarah," he said, and it was the first time he had used her given name. "I need to tell you something, and I understand if it changes things between us, but I can't keep working here and not say it." Her heart was beating faster. "What is it?" "I'm falling in love with you." His eyes never left hers. "Maybe I started falling that first night when you told me exactly what your expectations were and didn't apologize for any of it. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and you don't need anyone to save you or take care of you. But I want to be here anyway. Not because you need me, but because I want to build something with you, as partners, as equals." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes, unexpected and overwhelming. Everyone in town says I should be ashamed of who I am. Then everyone in town is wrong. Owen reached up to cup her face gently. You should be proud. I'm proud just to know you, to work beside you. I'm falling in love with you too, Sarah whispered. I've been trying not to because I was afraid it would mean giving up my independence, but you've never asked me to be anything other than who I am. I never would. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and when their lips met it felt like coming home. The kiss was gentle at first, then deeper, full of all the feelings they had both been holding back. They stood in the barn doorway, kissing while the last of the storm swept across the desert, and Sarah felt something she hadn't felt since her father died. She felt like she wasn't alone, not because she couldn't handle things herself, but because she had found someone who wanted to stand beside her, not in front of her. The next weeks were different. They were still professional during work hours, but in the evenings they sat together on the porch, talking about everything and nothing. Owen told her about growing up in Texas, about his dreams of having his own ranch someday. Sarah told him about her father, about the lessons he had taught her, about her determination to honor his legacy by succeeding on her own terms. Not on your own anymore, though, Owen said one evening, his arm around her shoulders as they watched the sunset. If you'll have me. I'll have you, Sarah said, but I need you to understand something. This ranch, it's mine. My father left it to me and I won't give up ownership of it, not even for marriage. I wouldn't want you to. Owen kissed her temple. I'm not interested in taking what's yours. I want to help you build it bigger and better. We can make this place something really special together. They announced their engagement in January of 1883. The reaction in Columbus was mixed at best. Some people seemed relieved that Sarah was finally conforming to proper behavior. Others whispered that she had trapped a man with her wanton ways, living alone with him before marriage. Sarah found she cared less about their opinions with each passing day. The wedding took place on a Saturday morning in February at the small church in Columbus. Sarah wore a simple cream-colored dress she had made herself, and Owen wore his best suit, brushed clean of trail dust. The minister who had once criticized her independence now performed their ceremony with thin-lipped disapproval. But none of that mattered when Owen took her hands and spoke his vows. I promise to stand beside you, not over you, to support your dreams, not replace them with mine, to love you for exactly who you are, today and always. Sarah felt tears on her cheeks as she spoke her own vows. I promise to let you in, to trust you with my heart and my hopes, to build a life with you based on mutual respect and equal partnership, to love you fiercely and freely, today and always. When they kissed as husband and wife, Sarah heard some disapproving murmurs from the congregation, but she also heard a few genuine well wishes. It was a start. They held a small reception at the ranch for the few friends who truly supported them. Martin Green, who owned the ranch to their east, came with his wife and congratulated them sincerely. A few of the Mexican families from south of the border, who had always treated Sarah with respect, brought food and music. It wasn't a large gathering, but it was warm and genuine, and that meant more than a big society wedding ever could have. That night, alone in the ranch house that was now theirs together, Owen carried her over the threshold even though she laughingly protested that she was perfectly capable of walking. He set her down gently in their bedroom, the room that had been her father's and was now theirs. Are you happy? He asked, pulling her close. Happier than I knew I could be, Sarah said honestly. She reached up to unpin her hair, letting it fall around her shoulders. I spent so long thinking I had to choose between independence and love. I never imagined I could have both. You never have to choose. Owen's hands were gentle as he helped her with the buttons of her dress. "Your independence is part of who you are. I fell in love with all of you, Sarah. Every stubborn, capable, beautiful part of you." They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other with patience and care. Afterward, lying in Owen's arms with moonlight streaming through the window, Sarah felt a peace she had never known. This was what partnership was supposed to be, she realized. Not one person dominating the other, but two people choosing to walk the same path together, each making the other stronger. The next months were busy and fulfilling. They worked the ranch together, training horses and expanding their breeding program. Owen had a gift for spotting bloodlines that would produce strong, intelligent foals, and Sarah had the patience to train even the most skittish horses. Together, they developed a reputation for producing some of the finest mounts in New Mexico territory. The town's opinion of Sarah slowly began to shift as well. It was hard to maintain that a woman was incapable when that woman was clearly succeeding. The Xander Ranch, as it was now known, became profitable enough that they hired 2 additional hands, young men from town who were respectful and hardworking. Sarah still faced judgment sometimes. There were still women who crossed the street to avoid her, still men who thought her unnatural for having business sense. But she had Owen beside her now, and that made the judgment easier to bear. More importantly, she had proof that she could be both independent and in love, both strong and soft, both a capable rancher and a devoted wife. In the spring of 1884, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. She told Owen one evening as they sat on the porch watching the horses graze in the pasture. For a moment, he simply stared at her, and she felt a flutter of worry. They had never discussed children in detail. Then Owen let out a whoop of joy that startled the horses and swept her into his arms, spinning her around carefully. "We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," Sarah confirmed, laughing at his enthusiasm. "Sarah, that's wonderful. That's incredible." He set her down gently, immediately looking worried. "Are you feeling all right? Should you be working with the horses? What do you need?" "I need you to stop fussing," Sarah said, though she was touched by his concern. "I'm pregnant, not fragile. I can still work." "But carefully, right?" "Carefully," she agreed, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "We're going to be parents, Owen." "Best job I'll ever have," he said, pulling her close. "After being your husband, of course." The pregnancy was relatively easy, though Sarah hated being told to slow down. She continued working with the horses through her 7th month, only stopping when her balance became too awkward to work safely in the corral. Owen took over the more physical aspects of training, while Sarah supervised and handled the administrative side of the business. The baby came on a cool October evening, delivered by the doctor from Columbus with the help of Mrs. Green, who had become a genuine friend to Sarah over the past year. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Sarah understood why so many women didn't survive childbirth. But she was strong, and when she finally heard her baby's first cry, she felt a surge of triumph along with the overwhelming love. "It's a boy," the doctor announced, placing the tiny, squalling infant on Sarah's chest. Sarah looked down at her son, at his red face and tiny fists, and felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. Owen stood beside the bed, tears streaming down his face, one hand gripping Sarah's and the other gently touching their son's head. "He's perfect," Owen whispered. "Sarah, he's perfect." They named him Samuel Owen Xander, after Sarah's father and his own name. Little Sam, as they called him, proved to have his mother's stubbornness and his father's easy temperament. He was a good baby, happy to sleep in a basket while Sarah worked in the barn or on the porch while she did paperwork. The town's opinion of Sarah completed its transformation after Sam was born. It was one thing to be a wild, independent woman. It was quite another to be a mother who still ran a successful ranch. Some people still disapproved, of course, but many more came to respect her. She had proven that a woman could do everything she was supposed to do and still maintain her own identity and ambitions. When Sam was 6 months old, Sarah and Owen stood together in the pasture watching their horses. The ranch now had 40 head, with several pregnant mares that would foal in the spring. They had 3 regular buyers and inquiries coming from as far as Texas and Arizona. "Your father would be proud," Owen said quietly, Sam sleeping against his shoulder in a sling. "I think he would," Sarah agreed. She leaned into Owen's side, his free arm coming around her. "I think he would be proud that I found a way to honor his legacy while building my own life." "Our life," Owen corrected gently. "Our life," Sarah agreed, smiling up at him. "I never thought I would have this. I thought independence meant being alone." "Independence means making your own choices," Owen said. "You chose me and I chose you. That doesn't make either of us less independent. It just makes us better together." Little Sam stirred and made a small noise in his sleep. They both looked at him, their son, the future of the ranch they were building together. Sarah thought about the woman she had been just 2 years ago, angry and alone, determined to prove she didn't need anyone. She had been right in a way. She hadn't needed anyone. But she had found someone who made her want to share her life, who made her stronger without making her weaker, who loved her for exactly who she was. The years that followed were full and rich. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. They added cattle to their horse operation and built a larger barn and a renovated bunkhouse for their expanding crew of hired hands. Sam grew into a bright, energetic little boy who loved the horses as much as his parents did. When Sam was 3 years old, Sarah gave birth to twin girls, Emma and Rose. The birth was easier than Sam's had been, and Sarah recovered quickly. The girls were different from their brother in every way, quieter and more thoughtful, but just as loved. The ranch house filled with the sound of children's laughter, and Sarah found that she loved being a mother as much as she loved being a rancher. Owen proved to be a devoted father, patient with the children's endless questions, and always willing to hoist one of them onto his shoulders or read them stories in the evening. But he never forgot that Sarah was his partner first, and he made sure they still had time alone together, still made decisions together, still supported each other's dreams. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Sarah with a gift. He led her out to the barn where a new sign hung over the door. It read, "Hartley Xander Ranch, established 1880. "You built this place," Owen said, his arms around her waist from behind. "Your name should be on it too, not just mine." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "For always seeing me, for always respecting what I built." "Thank you for letting me be part of it," Owen replied, turning her to face him. "For trusting me enough to let me in. I know that wasn't easy for you." "It was the best decision I ever made," Sarah said and kissed him deeply. By 1890, the Hartley Xander Ranch was one of the most successful operations in southern New Mexico. They had expanded to over 600 acres, employed 8 regular hands, and supplied horses to ranches and the cavalry throughout the Southwest. Sarah had become something of a legend in the territory, the woman who had refused to be shamed into conforming, who had built an empire on her own terms. But Sarah's favorite moments weren't the big successes or the profitable sales. They were the small, quiet moments. Sam teaching his little sisters how to braid a horse's mane. Owen kissing her forehead as he brought her coffee in the morning. Standing on the porch at sunset with her family around her, watching the light paint the desert gold. One evening, when Sam was 8 and the twins were 5, the whole family sat on the porch after dinner. Sam was whittling a small horse figure under Owen's supervision, and the girls were playing with their dolls. Sarah sat in her rocking chair, mending a shirt, and felt utterly content. "Mama," Emma asked suddenly, "Mrs. Peterson in town said you're not like other ladies. What did she mean?" Sarah exchanged a glance with Owen, who nodded encouragingly. She set down her mending and gestured for Emma to come sit on her lap. Rose immediately followed, not wanting to be left out. "Well," Sarah said carefully, "when I was younger, some people thought that because I ran the ranch and made my own decisions, I wasn't behaving the way a proper lady should behave. They thought I should be quieter and more dependent on others." "But you're the smartest person I know," Sam said, looking up from his whittling. "Why would anyone want you to be different?" "Because people are sometimes afraid of things that are different from what they expect," Owen explained. He moved to sit on the porch railing near Sarah. "Your mother scared some people because she was strong and independent. They didn't understand that those were good things." "I think being strong is good," Rose said firmly. "I want to be strong like Mama." "Me too," Emma agreed. Sarah felt her heart swell with love and pride. "You can be anything you want to be," she told her daughters. "Strong, independent, gentle, kind, all of those things at once. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you have to choose." "Did Papa tell you that?" Sam asked. Sarah smiled at her husband, seeing the love and respect in his eyes that had never dimmed over the years. "Your papa told me that being independent and strong was exactly what made me perfect for this life. And he was right. I just recognized something that was already true," Owen said. He reached over and took Sarah's hand. "Your mother didn't need me or anyone else, but she chose to let me be part of her life, and that's been the greatest honor of my life." The children seemed satisfied with that answer and went back to their activities. Sarah caught Owen's eye and mouthed, "I love you." He smiled and mouthed it back. As the sun set over the New Mexico desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and gold, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had been shamed for her independence, criticized for her strength, told she was too wild and uncontrollable for respectable society. She had been alone and angry and determined to prove she didn't need anyone. Then Owen had ridden up to her ranch one evening and told her that the very things she had been shamed for were what made her perfect. He had seen her for who she truly was and loved her not in spite of her independence but because of it. He had shown her that love didn't mean surrender, that partnership didn't mean losing yourself, that she could be strong and independent and still build a life with someone. The ranch they had built together was more than land and horses and profit. It was a testament to what could happen when two people chose to walk side by side as equals, each making the other better without diminishing themselves. It was a legacy they would pass down to their children, a lesson in the power of mutual respect and genuine partnership. Sam would grow up to expand the ranch even further, bringing modern techniques while honoring the foundation his parents had built. Emma would become a teacher, inspiring young girls throughout the territory to believe in their own capabilities. Rose would become a veterinarian, one of the first women to do so in New Mexico, and would return to the ranch to care for its horses with the same love her mother had shown. But that was all in the future. For now, Sarah sat on her porch with her husband beside her and her children around her, watching the desert sunset and feeling utterly, completely happy. She had been told she should be ashamed of who she was. Instead, she had built a life she was proud of, with a man who loved her for exactly who she was. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked softly. "How lucky I am," Sarah replied. "How grateful I am that you saw me, really saw me, when everyone else just saw something to fix or change." "I saw a woman who knew her own worth," Owen said. I saw someone extraordinary. I still do, every single day. The children had fallen asleep one by one as the evening progressed. Sam was curled up on the porch swing, his whittling project abandoned beside him. The twins were tangled together in Sarah's rocking chair, Rose's thumb in her mouth and Emma's hand clutching her sister's dress. Owen and Sarah carefully gathered their children and carried them inside to bed. They moved through the familiar routine together, tucking blankets and kissing foreheads, their movements synchronized from years of partnership. When the children were all settled, they stood together in the hallway of their home, listening to the quiet sounds of sleep. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. "For what?" "For riding up to my ranch that evening, for taking a chance on an independent, stubborn woman who everyone else had given up on, for showing me that I could be loved exactly as I am." Owen pulled her close, resting his cheek against her hair. "Thank you for giving me a chance, for letting me prove that not all men want to change you or control you, for building this beautiful life with me." They stood there in the quiet house, holding each other, two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed. Not someone to complete them, because they were already complete on their own, but someone to walk beside, to share burdens and joys, to build something bigger and more beautiful than either could have created alone. Outside, the New Mexico night was clear and bright with stars. The horses moved peacefully in their pastures. The land stretched out in all directions, wild and beautiful and theirs. And in the ranch house at the heart of it all, a family slept peacefully, loved and secure, the legacy of a woman who had refused to be anything other than herself, and a man who had loved her for it. Sarah Hartley Xander had been shamed for her independence. She had been told she was too wild, too strong, too capable for a woman. People had whispered about her, judged her, tried to force her into a mold she would never fit. But she had held firm to who she was, and in doing so, she had found not just success but genuine happiness. And when Owen Xander had told her that being independent and strong was exactly what made her perfect for this life, he hadn't just changed her world. He had validated everything she had always known about herself, everything her father had taught her, that she was enough, exactly as she was. That her strength was not something to be ashamed of, but something to be celebrated. That the right person would love her not in spite of her independence, but because of it. Years later, when Sarah was an old woman and people asked her about her life, about how she had built such a successful ranch and maintained such a strong marriage, she always gave the same answer. She had stayed true to herself, even when it was hard. She had refused to be shamed into becoming someone she wasn't, and she had been lucky enough to find a partner who saw her strength as an asset, not a threat. "The right person won't try to change you," she would tell young women who came to her for advice. "The right person will love you for exactly who you are and will build you up rather than tearing you down. Don't settle for less than that, no matter what society tells you that you should do." But on that evening in 1890, Sarah wasn't thinking about the future or the past. She was simply present in the moment, in Owen's arms, in the home they had built together, surrounded by the evidence of their love and partnership. The ranch was quiet, the children were safe, and the man she loved held her close. "Happy?" Owen asked, as he did so often. "Always," Sarah replied, as she always did. "When I'm with you, always." They went to their bedroom, the room they had shared for 8 years now, and prepared for sleep. But before they extinguished the lamp, Owen pulled Sarah close one more time. "I need you to know something," he said seriously. "What's that?" "Every single day I'm grateful that I took that chance and rode up to your ranch. Every single day I'm amazed that you chose me. You're the strongest, most capable, most extraordinary person I've ever known, and I'm honored to be your husband." Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. Even after all these years, Owen still had the power to move her with his words. "I'm grateful, too, for all of it. For you seeing me when others didn't. For loving me when others judged me. For building this life with me." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity and the passion of deep love. Afterward, Sarah lay in Owen's arms and thought about the girl she had been, alone and defensive, and the woman she had become. She was still independent and strong, still capable and stubborn. But now she was also loved, supported, and part of something bigger than herself. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Droughts came and went. Winters were harsh and summers were brutal. They lost horses and gained new ones. The children grew and changed. The ranch evolved and expanded. Through it all, Sarah and Owen faced everything together. Two people who had chosen each other and continued to choose each other every single day. On their 20th anniversary, their children, now grown, threw them a celebration at the ranch. Over 100 people came, neighbors and friends, business associates and family. People who had once shamed Sarah now praised her. The wild girl had become a respected matriarch, proof that independence and strength in a woman were not threats but assets. During the party, Sam stood up to make a toast. He was 20 years old now, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's determined jaw and sharp eyes. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass, "who taught me that real love is about respect and partnership. Who showed me that the best relationships are built between equals. Who proved that you don't have to change who you are to be loved, you just have to find the right person." Emma and Rose added their own words, talking about how their mother had shown them that women could be anything they wanted to be, and their father had demonstrated what true respect looked like. Sarah stood with Owen's arm around her waist, tears streaming down her face, and felt the weight of their shared history. All the struggles, all the judgments, all the hard work had led to this moment. They had built something lasting and true, something that would continue long after they were gone. That night, after the guests had left and the children had gone to their own homes, Sarah and Owen sat on their porch one more time, in the same spot where they had spent so many evenings over the years. "We did it," Sarah said softly. "We built something real." "We did," Owen agreed. "And we're not done yet." Sarah laughed. "We're getting old, Owen. We've already built more than most people dream of. But there's still more to do. More horses to train, more grandchildren to spoil, more sunsets to watch together." He took her hand, his thumb tracing the familiar lines of her palm. "I plan to spend every day I have left loving you, Sarah Hartley Xander, even though I'm still too independent and stubborn," she teased. "Especially because of that," he said, pulling her close. "That's what made you perfect for this life. That's what makes you perfect for me." And there, on the porch of the ranch they had built together, under the vast New Mexico sky, they kissed as they had 1,000 times before, and would 1,000 times more. Two people who had found in each other not completion but complementation. Not someone to fill their gaps, but someone to stand beside them. Not someone to change them, but someone to love them exactly as they were. The Hartley Xander Ranch continued to thrive for generations. It became a symbol in New Mexico of what could be built when people refused to accept limitations, when they chose partnership over domination, when they valued strength in all its forms. And at the heart of it all was the story of Sarah and Owen, the woman who refused to be shamed and the man who loved her for it. Their story was passed down through the family, told and retold to children and grandchildren. It became a lesson in courage and authenticity, in standing firm in who you are even when the world tells you to change. It became a reminder that the right person won't try to diminish your light, but will celebrate it and help it shine even brighter. Sarah and Owen lived long, full lives together, never losing the connection they had forged in those early days when she was alone, and he was searching for a place to belong. They died within months of each other, well into their 80s, surrounded by children and grandchildren who carried forward their legacy of independence, strength, and genuine partnership. The ranch they built still stands, a testament to what two people can create when they choose to walk side by side as equals. And somewhere in the hills of southern New Mexico, if you listen carefully on a quiet evening, you might hear the echo of two voices sharing stories on a porch, the sound of horses moving peacefully in the pasture, and the whisper of a love story that proved independence and partnership, strength and tenderness, are not opposing forces but complementary ones. Sarah had been shamed for being too independent, but she had refused to change. And Owen had looked at her and seen not something broken that needed fixing, but something beautiful that deserved celebration. Together, they had built not just a ranch but a legacy, not just a marriage but a true partnership, not just a life but a love story that would inspire generations to come. That was their story, the story of the woman who refused to be anything other than herself and the cowboy who loved her for it. It was a story of the Wild West, of hard work and determination, of facing judgment and emerging stronger. But most of all, it was a love story, proof that the deepest love comes not from changing yourself to fit someone else's expectations, but from finding someone who loves you exactly as you are.